What's up guys, Sean here, and today we're going to talk about progressive fan fiction. Erica Thomas is a progressive female representative for the great state of Georgia who was recently doing nothing except shopping with her child, who was making her first purchase of her entire life when an evil, racist white man who was white and evil and racist came up to her out of nowhere and said, "Miss, due to the color of your skin, you need to go back to your own country."
So you know what I decided? I decided to go live because I'm very upset because people are getting really out of control with this white privilege stuff. I'm at the grocery store and I'm in the aisle that says 10 items or less. Yes, I have 15 items, but I'm 9 months pregnant and I can't stand up for long. And this white man comes up to me and says, "You lazy son of a bitch." He says, "You lazy son of a bitch. You need to go back where you came from."
Now, as you can clearly see in that emotional, tear-jerking video, Erica Thomas was quite disturbed by the incident. The idea that white privilege, this disgusting scourge on our society known as white privilege, could get so out of hand that a woman who is pregnant shopping with her child would be confronted out of nowhere by an evil white racist who is both evil and white and racist, and be told to go back to her own country when her country is in fact the United States of America, is absolutely ridiculous and disgusting and horrific. And it should be a lesson to us all to take seriously when people in the Democratic Party and in the media tell us that Donald Trump's rhetoric leads to action on the ground against minorities. Millions of minorities are in danger because Donald Trump won't put down the Twitter and won't stop being an evil racist.
I think the president put millions of Americans in danger last night. His rhetoric is endangering lots of people. This is not just about threats to individual members of Congress, but it is about creating a volatile environment in this country through violent rhetoric.
Well, of course, that is the version of events that we were told and that the media regurgitated without bothering to fact-check the narrative. In reality, upon close examination, this whole narrative seemed a little bit shaky from the jump. The first thing that I noticed is that in the original Thomas video, she mentions that she had more items in her cart than were allowed in the express lane which she was standing in.
I'm at the grocery store and I'm in the aisle that says 10 items or less. Yes, I have 15 items.
Now for me, it seemed a little odd to mention the fact that you had more items than you were allowed to bring on the express line, which is the line that you were using when this confrontation started. When you mention that, I get this sneaking suspicion that the source of the argument wasn't just a random racist attack that happens to coincide with President Donald Trump's rhetoric. And in reality, it's the fact that you did bring more items than you were allowed to bring on the line, and that probably annoyed another customer. But that's not the only thing I found a little bit suspicious in this story.
You need to go back where you came from.
So I'm not exactly sure why people aren't saying this, because to me, it's the most clear and obvious thing that we all know is true, but for some reason, nobody's saying out loud. But black people are not immigrants. Now, that's not to say that there aren't immigrants within the United States that happen to be black, but typically, and I'm speaking for Americans, when you look at a black person in your country, your assumption is that that person is born in this country unless you have something else to indicate that they are not. Like an accent, something emblematic of another nation, like a flag or something like that. But the general assumption throughout the United States, maybe more than any other group within the United States, is that black people were probably born in the United States if you see them in the United States. So I have a black friend that's an immigrant from Canada. I know this. I've known this for 5 years since I met this person. but I have to be reminded of it all the time because I'm always asking him for questions on how to renew my passport or how to get my passport. What steps do I need to take to do this? And he's always like, dude, I'm Canadian. I've told you 1,000 times. Because that's how solid the assumption most Americans have that black people that you meet in your day-to-day lives are just black Americans and they're not typically immigrants. So this idea that there's an epidemic of people telling black Americans that were born here to go back to their country is completely ridiculous. It does not happen. Unless you have a specific accent to indicate you are from another country, this has probably never happened to you under any situation ever. And I'm sorry to go off on that little tangent in the middle of this video, but I've been told to go back to my country many more times than the average black person has in the United States of America. So for me, already there are 2 strikes, or should I say, dos strikes. You see, you guys don't realize this now because it's going to come in the part of the video that's after this part of the video. But when I just said dose right there and I held up these 2 fingers, later when you watch the video, you're going to be like, oh, I know what he meant by that. I get it. That was actually really clever. Dose strikes. You'll see. It's amazingly clever. Just come back to this point in the video and then leave a comment on how clever you think dose strikes is later on when you find out more about this story. Remember to do that. So right there, I'm already thinking that this is a very sketchy story. The timing of it politically is incredibly sketchy because it happens to occur at a time when we're talking a lot in the media about people being told to go back to their countries. It doesn't really make sense to tell a black American to go back to their country because the pre-assumption that people make about black Americans is that they are born in the United States of America. But then the story took the turn that I was waiting for, and I'm sure a lot of you were waiting for, and this guy actually came forward to say, that did not go down the way that this woman is saying it's going down. And in fact, I think she's trying to inflate and change the nature of this conversation in order to promote herself politically and promote her political agenda because she happens to be a Democratic state representative and a particularly radical Democratic state representative.
I walked into Publix, bought my 3 items. There were 3 checkout lanes. One was an express. The other 2 were empty. I kept my tongue shut. I walked and paid for my items in one of the empty lanes. This lady I noticed had about 20 items on the conveyor. Walked up to Miss Thomas and said, ma'am, not to be rude, my exact first words, pointing at the sign, which shows it on the surveillance camera, which I've seen already. Point at the sign, 10 items or less. She berates me after that. I don't remember exactly what she said, but on camera she approached me, came towards me as I took a couple steps back. She said a few words. I do not recall exactly what those words were. She said a few words. I stated, well, you're selfish little bitch. I did say that. That's all I said after that, and I walked out of Publix. Her words stating on Twitter in her video, stating I told her she needs to go back where she came from, are untrue. I am Cuban. I am not white.
So he tells his version of the story, and interestingly enough, our evil white racist, who is supposedly both evil and white and racist, turns out to be Cuban. So he's Hispanic. So he's an evil Hispanic racist who was cast in the role of an evil white racist. Which I just want to say right now, I think is very progressive. I'm very supportive whenever white characters are recast as minorities because they need a lot of opportunities in our society, especially when it comes to seeing themselves represented on screen. So not only is he Cuban, but he's also very anti-Trump. He has a long history of Facebook posts that are incredibly anti-Trump. He specifically defended the squad on his Facebook page before any of this with this Democratic state representative came up.
You know how you make my daughter feel.
Back off before I call the police.
Call the police right now because they are looking for you.
I already talked to them.
It's okay. I am so happy that you're here. And he thinks that he gets a 5 minutes of fame. You think that you're going to come up when you see police, when you see SB 46, you think you're going to come up here and get a spotlight? No, you're not.
So while he's saying his piece to the media, giving his side of the story, Representative Thomas tries to berate and intimidate him by letting him know that the police are looking for him. Which, by the way, I just want to point out, that even if he had said what Representative Thomas claimed he said initially, that wouldn't have been illegal. It's not illegal to be a bad person and to pick fights with people, verbal fights with people, in grocery stores. That's not a thing, that's a crime. But despite Representative Thomas attempting to intimidate him, he not only doesn't back down, but he points the media to the surveillance cameras at the Publix store in question, which he claims will show that she was in fact the aggressor in the situation. So he says his piece, they continue the interview with Representative Thomas, and all of a sudden, the very specific thing that started all this, that Representative Thomas said that this evil man said to her, is something that she's not saying that he actually said.
He said, go back, those types of words. I don't want to say, he said, go back to your country or go back to where you came from, but he was making those types of references is what I remember.
It is at this point where somebody who considers themselves a journalist would ask follow-up questions related to that statement. Because the entire story is that this man at the Publix told her to go back to her own country due to her race and due to his race and due to his racism. As soon as she backpedals and says, well, actually, I can't say that he said something specifically like that, the story is over. Well, actually, the story's not over, but the story has completely changed. It is no longer pregnant state representative gets attacked by racists in Publix. It is pregnant state representative lies to the media in order to stoke racial tensions and boost her own political profile. Whether or not he told her to go back where she came from or to go back to her country is the entire story. It's the entire narrative. It's what every media outlet ran with as the headline. If that's not true, then those stories need to be retracted. This is yet another example in a long line of examples of hate hoaxes that we've seen throughout the country ever since Donald Trump rode down that escalator and announced that he was running for president. This is the Georgia State Representative equivalent of Jussie Smollett. She knowingly lied, and then when confronted, all of a sudden her story got a little bit fuzzy on the most important parts of the story. And the thing that makes this story really obnoxious is that the media is desperately looking for stories throughout the country of Trump's rhetoric manifesting into action throughout this country. And while the media is doing that, while they're trying to play 6 degrees of separation with Trump's rhetoric and action in real life, there was action that was connected to rhetoric that they barely reported on. Now, to be clear, I don't like playing this game that somebody in power or somebody in the media said something and then some random nut job acted something out in the real world and then we trace it back and put the blame on that person. But the media struggled and bent over backwards to blame what would add up to a grocery store argument on Donald Trump, when they won't even ask Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez if she stands by her concentration camp comments after somebody tried to attack an immigration detention center because he believed that they were concentration camps. The media won't ask Shaun King to apologize when he tweeted out support for this terrorist to his 1 million Twitter followers, saying that he's the first martyr against this system of horrible concentration camps, claiming that he is arm in arm with an old school civil rights activist in heaven. There is nowhere near any kind of balance or even-handedness when it comes to the media. They have their agenda, they have the people that they don't like and they want to go after, and they will ignore any story that conflicts with that, and they will pursue and inflate any story that they think can help them get to that objective. Anyway, that's all I really have for you guys today. Let me know what you think about this story in the comments down below. If you like this video, then please show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. This has been me talking about a hate crime hoax. Till next time.